is Zoe Finley. So I think most people receive me as my race first and then go for my personality once they meet me. I've had okay moments, but I've had bad moments too. Like ever since I cut my hair or dyed it, people would say bad things about me or immediately think I'm lesbian or that I'm emo or just, things that aren't me.
My name is Alia Elvi. I feel like my identity is like a culmination of like a bunch of different aspects, like hobbies, religion, race, whatever. So like, say like being a Muslim from India, I'd consider that part of my identity, or like liking video games, or like liking reading or whatever, I'd consider that a part of who I am. It's been mostly like neutral, but there have definitely been some like negative points, especially regarding the whole like race religion aspect. So I've definitely been called a fair share of slurs, but like the biggest, most prevalent one is that now that I'm being more vocal about being a Muslim, I've definitely been called like a terrorist more than once. And like I've had jokes made about the size of my backpack, like, oh, I bet there's like a bomb in there or whatever. And that hasn't necessarily been fun. It's just kind of like, why would you bother saying those things? Because it's like, you have no clue who I am, you've never seen me in my life. You've probably just like heard word going around the school that like, oh, she looks like that and that she's a Muslim or whatever. Or like maybe you've seen me hang around people you know or whatever, stuff like that. So like basically they don't know who I am, but yet they still actively go out of their way to try and like shoot me down as well. What I would say to them is like, definitely like try educating yourself first, because I can tell you for a fact that there's no bomb in my backpack. It's just a shit ton of books. I definitely say try educating yourself first, or like do some research before you go out and insult people, because hatred is inherently rooted in ignorance. That's where it stems from, and that's where their hatred seems to be coming from as well. And one thing I would like them to know about me is that I'm not harmful to anybody. I'm not a threat. I'm just a kid going to school the same as them. If we keep like kind of spreading like positive messages, or like spreading educating like posters or videos or online or whatever, like kind of educating people about certain topics and like what's really like the full story behind them. Like for example, Islam, one of like the most like wrong topics there is, like the most prevalent topics there is the fact that we're inherently terrorists, and it's like that's just not true. Like if you took the time to go and scour our holy book, the Quran, obviously it'd be like one of the most major sins is taking another human life. And that's exactly what terrorism is. It's the taking of one life or many, and that's just not what we're about. So it's like spreading like educating messages and being gentle about it, like maybe not shoving it down people's throats, like just kind of being like, hey, this exists. I feel like that's kind of a start to how we can bring this country together.
My name is Sean Akers. I identify as a black male. When I was in 8th grade, there was this group of, I think they were like either seniors in high school or they were college or whatever. They had like a dirty truck, and I got off the bus and they called me the N-word. Mad. I was mad. I was upset. I told my mom, I told my brother, they were mad. They were like, next time they drive by, get their license plate number and we'll go to court. It's been like a word that's used to subject my people as like we're less than human, we've been degraded so long, and it just really like bothers me. As far as like my hair, for example, there was this random girl that went up to me, and she was white. She randomly went up to me. I didn't even know her. She touched my hair, and she was like, oh wow, I love your hair. And I was like, don't touch me. And it was kind of like disrespectful, like I was a petting zoo or something like that, like I was a pet. That's what she made it feel like. And, yeah.
My name is Deshante Boho. I am black. Oh, I'm a young black male in America. So like my experience of revolving around my identity has been like a mixed review, I would say, because Like, I've lived in Ohio, I've lived in Kentucky, I've lived in Alabama, I lived in Indiana. But I've lived in Indiana most of my life, obviously. But so I've had like different experience. Like in the southern areas, yes, there's a lot of more nigger this, nigger that, get away from me, nigger, or get us a nigger child, or I'm sorry, baby, And then like in Ohio, it's like, what are you doing here? You don't belong. We didn't have all these white people here for you to just be coming up here as blacks, And then in Indiana, it's just like, where's your dad? Is your dad in jail? It's just like all these questions shape a person's like way of thinking. But yeah, I would say like it's like been different for me because of that. But like luckily for me, like both of my parents have been like together for all this amount of years, like, and they've instilled to me and my 4 other siblings that don't let what anyone else says to you like affect you. You live your life how you want to live your life. Period. So yeah. Something that always sticks out to me like on a daily basis, like it happened today, was like when students who are not of, I can't even say African descent because everyone's from Africa. Anyways, but from, like the Middle Passage descent, okay, we'll go there. When they start like singing a song and they be like, oh, nigga this, nigga that. Or what's that song, Mobama or whatever?
Mobama.
Yeah, when they be like singing that song, it gets to me because it's just like that word is a oppressive word. Yes, it's not even like yes, it may be a friend type word now. It's never been a friend word. It's always been an oppressive word. It's always been an extension. Not an extension. What's the word for it? It's like the big word is nigger, the small word is nigga. It's the same word. It's not 2 different words. So therefore, it's still an oppressive word.
A nickname or whatever.
Right. It's still an oppressive word. So just for people to even black people, just be sitting here saying it's just very disrespectful to me as a person of color, as a person of color, especially to me. And I don't know. That's just one thing that just gets to me. And like, it's just, and they're like, oh, it's just a word. It's just like, friend, get over it. How am I supposed to get over it when my 3rd great grandparent was in slavery? So yes, it was that recent. Segregation was only 50 years ago. So like a stereotype that usually comes up for like black men is like, oh, they play basketball or whatever. It's like a specific story to me is like I moved here in the 8th grade, and so like we had like this everyone that was new to the school, they got this like get to know me type thing, or get to know whoever, where you came from, whatever. So they asked questions like, oh, what sports you guys play? And this one, I hate to say it, but Caucasian kid gets up and was like, oh, because it was me and 2 other black kids that was the only new ones. And they was like, oh, they play basketball. They was with the basketball team. I was like, no, sir, I definitely do cheer and I definitely do gymnastics. So I don't do basketball. And then another one was like, oh, they run track. They jump. They're the jumpers. I was like, oh, yes, I ran track. It was like, yeah, I ran track, but still, those stereotypes are like the bigger ones for like black males, like, oh, they run or they jump or they play basketball, they can't swim.
They're nothing more than athletes.
Right, they're nothing more than an athlete. They're nothing more than a garden utensil from back in the day, and a retired garden utensil, I should say. So I feel like by people saying these stereotypes or saying these words or whatever is digressing the nation's progression, if that makes sense. Like Mr. Rockefeller always says, well, he has said before that the nation is becoming more segregated and more segregated by the month and by the year, whatever. So, I mean, obviously, by people saying these words, they're going to be, for black people, for example, like, we're all going to move back together so we can all be, like, one type thing, And then, like, the Caucasians, they're going to stay with themselves because they will never understand it and will never get it because they have the same way of thinking, And so for these stereotypes to just be still around, no one is going to, like, progress in anything.
I think that I've been, like, not just me, but, like, my group of people, I just feel like we've been affected by stereotypes for so long that it's kind of, like, ingrained in a person's head, like, when they first see a black person, where it's like, oh, they're probably loud, oh, they're probably ghetto, oh, they're this, they're that, their hair's not real. It's, like, it's very harming, and it's self-destructive in a way. So it's just like, can we just stop? Just rewire the way we think, seeing more positive images of black people rather than more negative, because that's what the media loves to portray.
Mark Williams. What would I consider to be my identity? How in depth do we want to go with that?
However in depth you want to go.
Oh, okay. Well, man, my identity. I always think of myself as a human, first and foremost. I think the rest of the identity parts are just assigned to me, past being male. So a male human that I consider myself to be African American is also part of my identity. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm an educator, I'm an entertainer, brother, son, friend, cousin, Uncle Mark to some people, just a lot of things. So it's impossible for me to separate my perspective from my identity. So everything that I just named about my identity, that also informs my perspective. So when I look at things, I know that I have a unique perspective because my identity is unique. So everywhere I go, I've learned as I've gotten more mature that I should not expect other people to understand my perspective. I should expect them to be able to hear it and receive it, but I don't expect people to understand it because their perspective is different, because I think theirs is influenced by their own identity. So it's helped me be a more, more agreeable with other people, because I understand that sometimes those disagreements or agreements are all based off of the fact that we have different identities that we're trying to reconcile as we work together through stuff. So that's how humans operate, though. Our brains are programmed to try to classify. And so stereotyping is a form of classification. I guess a lot of times, just to keep it relevant, as a student and even as an educator, I know that some people see me and think, because I am a black male, I think that's how, as far as some people get it identity-wise. And so a lot of opinions about black males are negative in terms of in school environments, that because the data shows that we're typically at lower achievement levels, or lower success rates, or just less of everything really in the school environment. So then for me, when I've never been less than in the school environment, I was always close to the top of my class, I always did really well. That has always challenged people's perspectives and stereotypes. So then it's like, oh, you're not what I thought you would be, or oh, you're not like them, or oh, or you speak so well, or just all the different stuff I've heard, just because I didn't fit into that narrow, low achievement, low engagement stereotype that some people have. I think that that last stereotype, the idea that I'm more likely to not be successful than people that are the same age as me, but in different identity groups, that's the most irritating one, because it's the one that people will work things through that. So if that's what they believe, then that's how they also will treat you, or treat me. And so then those moments where people don't expect me to have the right answer, or don't expect me to have something productive to add, that is so irritating and frustrating. I don't feel like I have to prove anybody wrong. I feel like I'm still just existing as myself, but I know it even irritates me to know that they probably have the moment where they're like, oh, I didn't expect that from him. That is just super irritating. That's the number one for me. So I would just say that I think that people need to start to figure out what their own identity is before we have a habit of trying to do the work of finding out about other people, and learning about other people, and that's great, and we should. But if you have not stopped to learn by yourself and create your own understanding of your own identity, everything else you do outside of that is going to be flawed, because you don't really know who you are. And if you really want to be able to connect with other people, you got to know where you're coming from first. And so I think that everybody needs to stop and, as plainly as saying, write down what is my identity, and go through, list what you think your identity is, and then review that, and then say, is that really what I see myself as? Is that really my identity? And if it is, then cool. And if it's not, then you need to keep going through that until you get to the point where you're like, no, this is me, this is who I am, this is how I define myself, this is how I see myself.
My name is Whitney Roberts. The biggest part of my identity would definitely be that I am a lesbian. My experience revolving around my identity has been a mixture of both good and bad. At school and in other places outside of my house, it's been pretty good, and I haven't faced too much homophobia, but at home it's been completely bad, except for my father and a couple people on my mom's side. So some of these experiences that were bad, for example, would be that I've been raised Catholic, so that's not exactly been the easiest thing, also being gay. Now I identify as an atheist, which is an entire other thing within my mom's side of the family. And then the one bad experience I had outside of my home life that was in public was when I went to the state fair and a guy at a Christian table saw me wearing a pride tag and approached me and told me to stop and called me a couple slurs. Some of these slurs were like just dyke and then like fag, which wasn't fun, but it was only one time and I was dressed very, very masculine. So I understand, because it's Indiana, why that happened, specifically with that one person at that booth. So one of the bad stereotypes around being a lesbian that I've like been thrown the question at a couple times, just a few times, is that all lesbians hate men. Incorrect. Most of my friends are actually guys, and I get along typically much better with men. Like, we're all bros. Like, I don't hate men, like, at all. We're good friends. I do not. In fact, I'm probably more physical with more of my guy friends than I am with some of my closest girlfriends.
Is there anything else that
you would like my ethnic studies class or the world, people in general to know about you or anything in general?
Just love each other, man. Like, there's so much hate in this world. Just spread positivity. Don't judge people on their first impression. Because, like, they could be around friends and be acting stupid, and which is what they truly are like, but don't judge people based on their skin color, religion. Judge them for who they are as a person, and look into their heart for their true values. I think if we try to educate the ignorant, which is a big stretch, but the less ignorant people, the more we could maybe introduce them to new cultures or new ways of doing things or looking at people, because the world shouldn't be such a negative place, because there's negativity everywhere, and I think we should try to reduce that as much as we can with equality and education.
One thing I would tell them is that the world isn't inherently bad. Not everyone is essentially a bad person, no matter how you view them.
I want people to know that you can't just go around acting like you're all this, and then when you offend somebody with the word, like the N-word, for example, that they're just gonna sit back and take it. Like, no, that's not okay. And just, I don't know, maybe be a little more sensitive towards other people and their experiences, because I feel like, I don't want to like say the wrong thing, but like I feel like mostly white people kind of just say insensitive things about black people and stuff, like, oh my god, is that a weave? Like, that's none of your business, first off, and second off, like, is your hair a weave? Like, I don't.
Do you have lice?
Right. Do you have lice? Like, mind your business and stay in your lane, and I'll stay in mine. And that is that on that.
I would have to say, like what Sean said, like, words are oppressive. Words, like, what's the saying? Words some, but words will never hurt me. Sticks and stones break my bones, words may never hurt me. Words do hurt, especially like derogatory words or like slave words, for example. You get? For example, like those words do hurt. So I just feel like people should be more sensitive to the fact and sensitive to the issues that people say, to the words that people say, and to how they affect other people around the people that you're saying it to. And like, I just have one message to say real quick. There is no black card. Don't say there's no black card. Oh, my black friends, I can say nigger. No, you can't. Or not nigger, sorry, nigger. Same thing. Anyways, but there is no card. Don't say it. Period. In a discussion.
So the one thing I want everyone to know is that outside of me being a lesbian, one thing I do find commonly is that people sometimes are not sure if I'm just a boy with long hair or if I'm a lesbian because of the way I dress. I'm a very masculine dresser, so I'm hoping that one day it'll be normal for girls to wear more masculine clothes without having to go out in public and people do a double take to see what gender they are.
I'm gonna put that at the end of the video. Your dogs.